Legends of the Egyptian Gods by Ernest Alfred Thompson Wallis Budge. Preface. The favorable reception that has been accorded to the volumes of this series, coupled with the circumstance that several have advanced into second and third editions, indicates that these modest books have proven beneficial to novitiates in Egyptology and general readers alike. Heretofore, their primary objective has been to furnish information regarding the religion, magic, language, and history of the ancient Egyptians, as well as to provide editions of the original texts from which such knowledge was derived. There remain, however, numerous branches of Egyptology that require similar treatment within this series, and it has been widely proposed that the opportune moment has arrived to commence the publication of a succession of text groupings that illustrate Egyptian literature in its entirety. Given that nothing is known regarding the authors of Egyptian works, not even their names, it is impossible to compose a history of Egyptian literature in the conventional sense of the term. The sole viable course of action is to reproduce the actual works in the finest and most comprehensive form attainable, accompanied by translations, thereby entrusting them to the reader and deferring to his discerning judgment. With this objective in view, a decision has been reached to publish several volumes within the series dedicated to the reproduction, in hieroglyphic typography, of the most exemplary and characteristic specimens of the diverse genres of Egyptian literature. These shall be accompanied by English translations on a significantly grander scale than was feasible in my first steps in Egyptian or in my Egyptian reading book. These volumes are designed to serve a dual purpose: to furnish the student of Egyptian with novel material and a progressive series of reading texts, and to present the general reader with translations of Egyptian works in an accessible format. The Egyptian texts, irrespective of whether the originals were inscribed in hieroglyphic or hieratic characters, are herein printed in hieroglyphic typography and arranged alongside their English translations on a page-for-page basis. They are printed exactly as they appear in the original documents. The words are not delineated by divisions. The beginner will discover that the practice of dividing the words independently is highly advantageous in cultivating a facility for reading and comprehending the language. The translations are as literal as may reasonably be expected, and, taken as a whole, I maintain that they convey the exact meaning that the original authors intended to articulate. In instances of passages where the text is corrupt and the readings are conflated, or where exceedingly rare vocabulary occurs, or where words have been omitted, the provided renderings purport to be nothing more than tentative suggestions regarding their significance. It must be borne in mind that the precise definitions of numerous Egyptian words have yet to be definitively ascertained. Furthermore, the ancient Egyptian scribes were frequently as bewildered as contemporary scholars by certain texts they transcribed. Consequently, owing to carelessness, ignorance, fatigue, or a combination of all three, they committed errors that the modern student remains unable to rectify. Within the introduction, one will find succinct descriptions of the contents of the Egyptian texts, wherein their general import and significance are delineated, alongside references to authoritative editions of both texts and translations. E. A. Wallis Budge. Chapter 1. The Legend of the God Neb Archer and the History of Creation. The text of the distinguished legend of the creation, which comprises the opening section of this volume, is preserved upon a finely crafted papyrus housed within the British Museum under the designation 10188. This papyrus was acquired by Alexander Henry Rind in 1861 or 1862 during his excavation of tombs situated on the western bank of the Nile at Thebes. It was not unearthed by him from within a tomb, but rather was obtained from the British consul at Luxor, Mustafa Aga, as part of an exchange of gifts upon Rhine's departure from the country. Mustafa Aga had retrieved the papyrus from the celebrated repository of the royal mummies at Dar al-Bahari, a location he had been privy to for many years prior to its disclosure to the Egyptian Service of Antiquities. Upon Rhine's return to England, the fruits of his excavations were examined by Dr. Birch, who, recognizing the profound significance of the papyrus, intended to publish it alongside facsimiles of two papyri. However, Rhine's demise in 1865 precluded the realization of this endeavor. Rhine's collection was subsequently acquired by David Bremner, and the papyrus, along with numerous other antiquities, was purchased by the trustees of the British Museum. In 1880, Dr. Birch proposed its publication to Dr. Plate, director of the Egyptian Museum at Leiden, who transcribed and translated portions of the festival songs of Isis and Nephthys, the initial text contained within the papyrus, and subsequently published them in a Parisian collection. In 1886, facilitated by Dr. Birch's generosity, I examined the papyrus and published transcriptions of pivotal passages, as well as the account of the creation, in the Proceedings of the Society of Biblical Archaeology. Dr. H. Brugge deemed the legend of the creation to be of immense value for the comprehension of Egyptian religion, and with his encouragement, I executed a complete transcription, which was later published in Archaeology, complete with transliterations and translations. In 1910, I edited the entirety of the hieratic text on behalf of the trustees of the British Museum, accompanying it with a revised translation. The papyrus measures approximately 16 feet 8 inches in length and 9 1/4 inches in width, encompassing 21 columns of hieratic text in short, poetic lines and 12 columns in extended lines, amounting to a total of between 930 and 940 lines. The text is inscribed in a diminutive, precise, and exceedingly dark script, likely originating from the period spanning the 26th dynasty to the Ptolemaic era. Titles, catchwords, rubrics, the names of Apep and his minions, as well as select terminology, are inscribed in red ink. The document features two colophons. One indicates the date, the first day of the 4th month in the 12th year of Pharaoh Alexander, son of Alexander, 311 BC, while the other identifies the priest who either commissioned or replicated the papyrus, Nesmenu or Nesamsu. The legend of the creation is situated within the third text of the papyrus, entitled the Book of Overthrowing Apep, the enemy of Ra, the enemy of An-Nefer. This work comprises incantations recited during specific ceremonies to forestall tempests, disperse rain clouds, and eradicate any impediment, whether animate or inanimate, that might obstruct the sunrise or obscure the light of day. Apep, the vanguard of the forces of darkness, manifested in the celestial sphere as a monstrous serpent, marshalling the fiends of Tuat in a concerted endeavor to incarcerate the sun god in perpetual obscurity. Embedded within the incantations directed against Apep is the legend of the creation, a narrative that appears in no other extant Egyptian document. A more extensive iteration of the legend is presented subsequently, though it remains uncertain whether the scribe possessed two distinct sources or simply expanded upon the initial rendition. The legend bears the title Book of Knowing the Evolutions of Ra and of Overthrowing Apep, and it delineates not only the genesis of the heavens, the earth, and all that dwells therein, but also the origin of God himself. Apep is notably absent from this account, suggesting that the book's inclusion within the Apep ritual is a testament to its formidable potency as an incantation, the mere recitation of which could prove fatal to Apep and his adherents. The creation narrative is ascribed to the god Neber-Chur, a name signifying Lord to the uttermost limit, whose very nature implies supreme dominion over time and space as the everlasting God of the universe. Nebuchadnezzar is featured in Coptic texts, wherein he is endowed with attributes traditionally associated with the Almighty God. His existence is characterized as an omnipotent, invisible force that permeates the entirety of space. A profound desire awoke within him to create the world, precipitating his transformation into the god Khepra, the supreme creator among the Egyptian deities. This metamorphosis occurred prior to the genesis of the heavens and the earth, within the primordial waters, or the world ocean Nu, wherein all future living entities existed in a latent state. From this vast ocean Khepra emerged, effectuating a profound transition from passivity into vigorous activity. The second version of the legend posits that Khepra brought himself into being by uttering his own name, whereas the initial version describes him employing spoken words to fashion a foundation upon which to stand. While still an aspect of Nebuchadnezzar, he pronounced the name Khepra, thereby causing its existence, and articulated the name of the location he desired for a foundation, which consequently materialized. This incantation was directed toward his own heart, or will, culminating in immediate creation. The initial account mentions solely the heart, whereas the latter references the heart-soul assisting Khepra in his primordial acts, thereby implying that thought precedes creation and is actualized by naming the intended object. In the Egyptian tongue, this process is expressed as laying the foundation within the heart. Khepra's thoughts and their subsequent manifestations were guided by the goddess Mot, who is generally regarded as the deity of law, order, and truth, and in later traditions, considered the feminine counterpart of Thoth, the heart of Ra. Within this legend, Mot embodies wisdom, much as she does in the Book of Proverbs, assisting in the establishment of foundational order. Having thus recounted the emergence of Khepra and the foundation upon which he stood, the legend proceeds with an account detailing the formation of the first Egyptian triad. Khepra united with his own shadow, producing offspring who manifested as the deities Shu and Tefnut. According to traditions preserved within the pyramid texts, this event transpired at On, with the archaic form of the legend attributing the creation of Shu and Tefnut to an act of masturbation. Initially, these deities personified air and dryness, and liquids, respectively. Thus, their emergence supplied the essential elements required for the formation of the atmosphere and the firmament. Shu and Tefnut were subsequently joined, and their progeny were Keb, the earth god, and Nut, the sky goddess. At this juncture, 5 deities existed. These comprised Khepra, the creative principle, Shu, the atmosphere, Tefnut, the waters above the heavens, Nut, the sky goddess, and Keb, the earth god. It is presumed that the sun first descended from the watery abyss of Nu at this moment, illuminating the world and thereby establishing the day. In early beliefs, the sun or its luminance was regarded as an aspect of Shu. The union of Keb and Nut was disrupted by the advent of light, which drove them apart. Throughout the daylight hours, Nut remained in the heavens, supported by Shu, but at sunset, she descended to rest upon Keb. From their embrace, Nut gave birth to 5 deities. These were Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Osiris and Isis were united prior to their birth, and Isis bore Horus, just as Set and Nephthys also married before birth, with Nephthys bearing Anpu or Anubis, although he is omitted from the legend. Osiris is distinctly singled out with Khepra, speaking in the guise of Nebuchadnezzar, declaring his name as Ozars, embodying the primeval matter from which he was fashioned. Osiris thereby shares substance with the great god and represents a reincarnation of his great-grandfather. This section elucidates the perception of Osiris as both a benefactor upon the earth and a savior in the heavens. The legend identifies the sun as the eye of Khepra or Nebertcher and recounts a calamity that dimmed its brilliance, possibly nightfall, a solar eclipse, or a tempest. To compensate, the deity created a second eye, the moon, granting it a portion of the sun's radiance and positioning it within his face. There, it gained authority over vegetation, trees, and herbs, linking it to fertility and the success of crops from the most ancient of times. According to the legend, men and women originated not from the earth itself but directly from Khepra or Nebertcher, who combined his members and wept, and from whose tears humanity arose. The creation of beasts is not recounted in detail, although creeping creatures of all varieties, likely including larger quadrupeds, were formed. These beings reproduced according to their kinds, thus populating the earth with their descendants. This constitutes the legend of creation as preserved within the papyrus of Nesmenu. The texts contain intricate passages and several corrupted readings, with no variant manuscripts available for correction. Notwithstanding these difficulties, the essential meaning remains clear, illuminating Egyptian religious thought. The Egyptians acknowledged God as creator and sustainer, yet they entrusted worldly affairs to subordinate beings known as gods, who were subject to magical influence through spells and ceremonies. The deity was considered so exalted and remote that direct intervention in human affairs or the alteration of divine decrees was entirely unexpected. The subordinate spirits, possessing natures more akin to humanity, could be swayed through supplication, flattery, and offerings. It is particularly noteworthy that such a legend so vividly depicts the power of God as the creator of the world and the celestial bodies within a text devoted to magical rites, which were aimed at defeating a mythological monster whose sole purpose was to prevent the sun from rising. Chapter 2. The Legend of the Destruction of Mankind. The text containing the legend of the destruction of mankind is inscribed in hieroglyphs upon the four walls of a small chamber, accessed from the Hall of Columns within the tomb of Seti I, situated on the western bank of the Nile at Thebes. Upon the wall opposite the entrance, the figure of the great cow of heaven is painted in crimson, with the lower portion of her abdomen adorned by 13 stars, beneath which rest the two boats of Ra, Semketet and Manchet, or Sektet and Metet. Each of her 4 legs is held by 2 deities, while Shu, with arms fully extended, supports her body. The cow was illustrated by Champollion without the accompanying text. This significant mythological text was first published and translated by Professor E. Neville in 1874, and later republished by Bergman and Brugsch, who provided a transcription alongside a German translation. Subsequent German editions were produced by Loth, Brugsch, and Weidmann, while Lefebvre translated a portion of the text into French. The most recent edition was published by Lefebvre, and a second, heavily damaged copy was printed by Neville in 1885, accompanied by a French translation. The text presented herein follows the edition of Lefebvre. The legend recounts an era when the gods of Egypt roamed the land, mingling with humanity and remaining fully cognizant of their desires and needs. Ra, the sun god, ruled Egypt, although he was not the initial sovereign among the dynasty of gods. His predecessor, Hephaestos, is said by Manetho to have reigned for 9,000 years, whereas Ra reigned for 992 years, although Panodorus assigns him a reign of fewer than 100 years. Regardless, Ra, the self-created deity, had governed humanity for an extended epoch, and his subjects murmured about his advancing age, describing his bones as silver, his flesh as gold, and his hair as genuine lapis lazuli. Hearing these murmurs, Ra commanded his retinue to summon the deities who had accompanied him in the primeval world ocean, instructing them to convene in the great house, likely the temple of Heliopolis, thereby confirming the legend's Heliopolitan origins. Upon Ra's arrival, the gods paid homage, arrayed themselves on either side, and awaited his pronouncements. Addressing Nu, the personification of the world ocean, Ra declared that the humans created by his eye were in open rebellion and consequently asked for their counsel, preferring not to strike down mankind without first hearing their advice. The assembled gods recommended dispatching his eye to punish the blasphemers, an unstoppable force, particularly when manifested as the goddess Hathor. Ra heeded this counsel and dispatched Hathor, who pursued and annihilated the fleeing rebels, rejoicing in her grim work and receiving Ra's adulation upon her return. The slaughter commenced at Sutenhenan, or Heracleopolis, with Hathor wading through human blood throughout the entirety of the night. Ra affirmed his absolute authority over the rebels, an event likely referenced in Chapter 17 of the Book of the Dead, marking the inauguration of Ra's kingship at Sutenhenan. Osiris was likewise crowned there. Furthermore, the city housed the great Bennu bird or phoenix, as well as the crusher of bones mentioned in the negative confession. The legend further recounts an action of Ra whose true purpose remains obscure. He sent messengers at great speed to Abu or Elephantine to procure vast quantities of a fruit called tatat, possibly mandrakes or love apples, according to Budge. This fruit was subsequently given to Sekti, a Heliopolitan goddess, to crush and blend with human blood within a massive batch of beer, which had been prepared from wheat by female slaves, amounting to a total of 7,000 vessels. Ra expressed his approval of the beverage and commanded that it be transported up the river to the location where Hathor persisted in her slaughter. Under the cover of night, the beer was poured across the meadows of the four heavens. Upon imbibing it, Hathor became intoxicated and ceased her onslaught against humanity. Ra welcomed her as Amit, the beautiful one, thereby establishing the city of Amit in the western delta near Lake Mareotis, a locale where beautiful women were thenceforth found. Furthermore, he decreed that during all future festivals, vessels of soporific beer must be prepared in a quantity equal to the number of Ra's handmaidens. Participants in the festivals devoted to Hathor and Ra consumed beer in copious quantities, and under the influence of the beautiful priestesses, who were thought to embody the likeness of Hathor, the celebrations degenerated into intoxicated and licentious revelry. Shortly thereafter, Ra voiced complaints of suffering and profound weariness caused by mankind, deeming them worthless and lamenting that a greater number had not been annihilated. The gods implored him to endure, reminding the deity that his power was commensurate with his will. Nevertheless, Ra remained unconsoled, lamenting a newfound weakness in his limbs for the very first time. Nu subsequently instructed Shu to assist Ra, and Nut transformed herself into a celestial bovine, permitting Ra to mount her back with the support of Shu. Upon witnessing Ra departing upon the cow of heaven, humanity experienced great terror and repented, crying out for him to remain and chastise the blasphemers. However, the cow conveyed Ra to Hedahet, a town in the nome of Mareotis that was later associated with the right leg of Osiris. Darkness descended over the land, and at the break of dawn, the repentant men slew the enemies of Ra. thereby earning his pleasure and his forgiveness. From this juncture forward, human sacrifices were offered during the festivals of Ra within this region, at Heliopolis, and throughout other parts of Egypt. Subsequently, Ra declared unto Nut his intention to ascend into the heavens, proclaiming that all who wished to behold his countenance must follow him. He established a domain in the celestial realm, commanding the creation of a vast expanse, Sekhet-hetep, the field of peace, alongside reeds that formed Sekhet-aru, the field of reeds. Sekhet-hetep was regarded as the equivalent of the Elysian fields, with the field of reeds constituting a notable section therein. Ra's subsequent command brought forth the stars, likened unto blossoms. As Nut trembled, Ra, fearing she might fall, caused the 4 pillars that support the heavens to come into existence. He instructed Shu to support Nut and uphold the firmament, thereby establishing Shu as the new sun god in Ra's stead, an act that secured the heavens and permitted humanity to thrive under the illumination of the new sun. At this juncture, the text inserts the chapter of the cow, which details the cow of heaven, the boats of the sun, the positions of the deities by her legs, and a sequence of magical names or formulae. The cow represents the sky through which Ra's boats sail, her 4 legs symbolizing the immutable cardinal points, while the expanse above her back constitutes the heaven of Ra, the abode of the gods and celestial spirits who govern the world. After creating the heavens and ordering earthly existence and human welfare, Ra recalled having been bitten by a serpent during his time on earth, an event that had nearly cost him his life. In order to protect his successor, he instructed Thoth to summon Keb, the earth god, commanding him to wage war against the serpents and to instruct Nu to maintain vigilance over all reptiles of the earth and the water, recording their locations with strict injunctions against harming humanity. Keb was appointed as their eternal guardian, while Ra promised to share the protective word of power, Heikau, with magicians, snake charmers, and his son Osiris, ensuring immunity from serpent bites for them and their descendants, thereby establishing the ancient profession of snake charmers by the decree of Ra then summoned Thoth to accompany him to Tuat, the other world, where he intended to make his light shine. Therein, Thoth, the scribe of truth, was commanded to record the names of all beings, to punish the sinful, and to exercise absolute authority within Tuat as Ra's vicar. Effectively assuming the place of Ra, Thoth was empowered to dispatch a messenger, an act that gave rise to the ibis, to embrace the heavens, which resulted in the creation of the moon god, and to repel the northern peoples, thereby forming the dog-headed ape of Thoth. Finally, Ra instructed that all worshippers offer him praise as god, thus completing his abdication. Fragmentary texts describe how reciting this legend bestows benefits upon humanity, proclaiming that the soul animating Ra is that of the Aged One, as well as of Shu, Khnum, He, and so forth. The reciter asserts himself as Ra through the word of power, Heka. Proper recital grants life in the other world and engenders greater respect therein. The ritual requirements entail wearing new linen garments, bathing in the waters of the Nile, donning white sandals, anointing the body with holy oil, burning incense, and painting a figure of Mot upon the tongue in green pigment, stipulations that apply equally to both the laity and the clergy. Chapter 3. The Legend of Ra and Isis. The original text of this remarkable legend is inscribed in hieratic script upon a papyrus preserved at Turin, and it was published by Plate and Rossi in their corpus of Turin papyri. French and German translations were subsequently produced by Lefebvre and Weidmann, while comprehensive summaries were provided by Ehrman and Maspero. A transcription into hieroglyphics, accompanied by transliteration and translation, was published in 1895. It is evident that upon retiring from the governance of the world, R.A. employed Thoth to bestow upon humanity words of power and incantations for protection against serpents and other perilous reptiles. The legend concerning the destruction of mankind does not elucidate this matter. However, the subsequent legend of R.A. and Isis clarifies precisely why R.A., the king of the gods, harbored a fear of the reptiles of Keb. The chapter of the divine god commences by enumerating Ra's immense attributes as the creator of the universe, portraying him as an entity unknowable even to his fellow deities. During this epoch, Isis lived as a woman highly skilled in spells and incantations, regarded in much the same manner as the medicine women or witch women found within modern African societies. Having already exercised her formidable powers over mortal men, she now sought absolute dominion over gods, spirits, and humanity alike. Isis resolved that the sole means of obtaining such profound power was to discern Ra's secret name, which contained the essence of his very existence. R.A. guarded this name with fierce jealousy, for to reveal it would be to place himself entirely at the mercy of its possessor. When ordinary methods proved utterly ineffectual, Isis devised an alternative stratagem. It was widely recognized throughout Egypt and Sudan that the possession of a fragment of a person's body, such as hair, nail clippings, skin fragments, or bodily efflux, enabled a magician to cast malevolent spells. Observing Ra's advanced age and mounting frailty, and witnessing his saliva dribble upon the ground, Isis collected the fluid, commingled it with the dust, and fashioned it into a large serpent equipped with venomous fangs. She then uttered incantations over the creature and placed it directly upon Ra's path, ensuring it would strike him during his daily travels while inspecting the lands of Egypt. Comparable methods are employed by the Binyoro in Sudan, who utilize puff adders to slay buffaloes by strategically placing the reptiles along their established trails. When R.A. passed by, the serpent bit him, injecting a terrible venom. He cried out in profound agony, trembling violently and finding himself temporarily rendered speechless. The gods rushed to his side, and R.A. revealed that a deadly serpent had bitten him, inflicting a fiery agony despite his mastery of words of power and his concealed secret name. He proceeded to summon all the gods who were knowledgeable in the magical arts. Among them came Isis, renowned for her spells, her ability to eradicate disease, and her power to revive the dead. Addressing R.A., she inquired as to what had transpired, and the deity recounted the serpent's bite alongside his ensuing affliction. Isis, employing her characteristic cunning, urged him to declare his name, insisting that the act of uttering it would preserve his life. R.A. recounted his magnificent acts of creation, identifying himself as Khepra in the morning, R.A. at noon, and Temu in the evening, harboring the hope that these titles would satisfy Isis. She readily recognized that his true secret name remained undisclosed and pressed the sovereign deity further. As the venom coursed violently through his veins, R.A. finally consented, declaring that Isis should search within him, thereby allowing his sacred name to pass into her possession. R.A. then withdrew from the sight of the gods, leaving the boat of millions of years unoccupied, with his secret name concealed deep within his heart. Isis, remaining cautious of Ra's promise, agreed with Horus to secure Ra's formal oath that he would part with his two eyes, the sun and the moon. Ultimately, R.A. permitted his heart and his secret name to be imparted to Isis, thereby rendering him, to all intents and purposes, a deceased deity. Fortified by the power of his name, Isis commanded the venom to recede from Ra, proclaiming that she had compelled it to fall to the earth, thus ensuring that Ra would survive and the poison would perish. This infallible incantation neutralized the bite or sting of any venomous creature. When inscribed upon papyrus or linen over the figures of Temu, Haruhikenu, Isis, or Horus, or when the text was dissolved in water for consumption, it served as a potent talisman against serpentine strikes. This tradition endures in Egypt and the Sudan, where water imbued with sacred inscriptions is still reputed to impart divine authority, demonstrating that the contemporary practice of imbibing magical water is rooted in the ancient Egyptian conviction regarding the tangible efficacy of their god's power. Chapter 4. The Legend of Haruba-Hudit and the Winged Disc. The legend is inscribed in hieroglyphics upon the walls of the Temple of Edfu in Upper Egypt, with specific segments illustrated in magnificent bas-reliefs. Professor Neville published both the text and the corresponding reliefs in his volume, The Myth of Horus, Geneva, 1870. A German translation by Budge was subsequently featured in the Proceedings of the Göttingen Academy, Volume 14, pages 173 to 236, alongside an additional rendering by Weidmann in his work, The Religion. The iteration presented herein dates to the Ptolemaic period, although its substantive content is exceedingly older, presumably reflecting fragments of historical occurrences that the late-period Egyptians endeavored to arrange chronologically. The author of this legend lacked profound expertise in Egyptian antiquity. In narrating the subjugation of Egypt, he conflated deities and intertwined historical chronicles with mythological allegories, frequently obscuring his underlying intent. The principal occurrence depicted is the conquest of Egypt by an archaic sovereign who, having vanquished the southern populations, progressed northward, coercing all whom he defeated into submission. As the monarch of Egypt was invariably designated as Horus, the priests of Edfu, seeking to exalt their local deity, Horus of Behudit or Horus of Edfu, ascribed the triumphs of this pre-dynastic king to him. The legend proceeds upon the premise that Ra still reigned upon the earth, albeit advanced in age and enfeebled, having likely delegated his sovereign authority to his successor, who was acknowledged as his son. In the 363rd year of his reign, Harmachis was stationed in Nubia alongside his martial forces to chastise conspirators. In consequence of this campaign, Nubia is referred to as Uaua. From Nubia, Harmachis navigated towards Edfu, where Haruba-Hudit embarked upon his vessel and apprised him of the insurrectionists. Addressing Haruba-Hudit as his son, Harmachis commanded him to depart forthwith and to annihilate the wicked. Haruba-Hudit consequently transmuted into a colossal winged disc and ascended into the firmament, thereby assuming Ra's celestial position. From this elevated vantage point, he located and pursued the insurgents, assailing them with such extraordinary violence that they became utterly disoriented, slaughtering one another until not a single rebel survived. Thoth subsequently reported to Ra that, by virtue of his manifestation as a winged disc, Horus ought to be titled Haruba-Hudit, a designation he perpetually retained at Edfu thereafter. Ra embraced Horus, observing the ensuing carnage with profound satisfaction, whereupon Horus invited Ra to gaze upon the fallen adversaries. Ra and the goddess Ashtoreth thus surveyed the enemies fettered upon the earth. The legend proposes diverse etymologies for Edfu that possess no genuine historical validity, strongly resembling the ancient Semitic derivations of toponyms. Ra desired to navigate the Nile in jubilation, but the remaining adversaries metamorphosed into crocodiles and hippopotami to assail his vessel. Horus and his retinue, the Mesniu, blacksmiths highly proficient in metallurgy, vanquished these beasts. Armed with iron lances and formidable chains, they ensnared the aquatic monstrosities, plunging their lances into the creatures' snouts and slaughtering 651 of them. To commemorate Horus's martial triumph achieved through metalcraft, Ra ordained that a metallic statue be permanently enshrined at Edfu, furthermore naming the settlement in honor of the battle. Ra commended Horus for his valiant exploits, employing incantations derived from the Book of Slaying the Hippopotamus. Horus subsequently allied with the goddesses Uchit and Nekabet, who assumed serpentine forms and reclaimed his position as the winged disc upon Ra's bark to eradicate all foes encountered. The surviving adversaries fled southward, relentlessly pursued by Horus to Thebes, culminating in fierce engagements at Chetmet and Dendra, wherein Horus emerged entirely victorious. Enemies ensnared in chains and impaled by the blacksmith's spears fled northward to the marshlands of the Delta and the Mediterranean. There, Horus hunted and decimated them over the course of 4 days and nights. This included the execution of 142 foes and a male hippopotamus, whose remains were subsequently apportioned among his followers and the deities aboard Ra's bark. Horus boldly leapt upon the carcass of the hippopotamus as an emblem of his triumph, an act that resulted in the priest of Hubban being entitled He Who Standeth on the Back. The conflict persisted as a northern military force marched toward the sea, subsequently fleeing to Mertetament to forge an alliance with the disciples of Set. Horus and his blacksmiths pursued them to Purirehu, a location named for the two combatants, Horus and Set, where a monumental engagement transpired. Horus apprehended 381 captives, executed them, and distributed their remains to his adherents. Set pronounced a malediction upon Horus for the slaughter of his allies, thereby earning the epithet Nihahahur, meaning stinking face. Horus and Set then engaged in a protracted and vicious struggle, which ultimately culminated when Horus drove his spear through Set's neck, causing the fiend to plummet headlong. Horus then struck with his club the very mouth that had uttered such blasphemies, securely binding Set with a chain. In this subjugated state, Horus dragged Set before Ra, who extolled Horus with immense praise. Titles were subsequently bestowed upon the palace of Horus and the high priest of the temple to eternalize the event. As the gods deliberated upon Set's destiny, Ra decreed that he and his demonic legion should be consigned to the absolute dominion of Isis and her son Horus, who were granted the liberty to do with them as they pleased. Without hesitation, Horus severed the heads of Set and his fiends in the presence of Ra and Isis, subsequently dragging Set by his feet across the terrain, with a spear transfixing his head and neck. Following this execution, Isis designated Horus of Behudit as the divine guardian of her son, Horus. The cosmic warfare between the sun god and Set remained a prominent motif among Egyptian scribes, manifesting in manifold variations, including the clashes between Huru and Set, Ra and Set, Huru-Behudit and Set, Osiris and Set, and Horus, the son of Isis and Set. Originally, this antagonism symbolized the natural dichotomy between light and darkness. However, as epochs passed, the sun god came to embody righteousness and truth alongside illumination, while Set came to signify sin and malevolence in addition to obscurity. Ultimately, the mythological derivations faded into oblivion, and the conflict evolved into an emblem of the perpetual struggle waged by virtuous men against iniquity. In Coptic literature, the narrative of Saint George slaying the dragon serves as a Christian adaptation of the Horus and Set legend. Thereafter, Horus, the son of Ra, and Horus, the son of Isis, manifested as formidable warriors possessing falcon visages and human forms, adorned with the red and white crowns. Each wielded a spear and a chain, and together they eradicated the remaining adversaries. Set, however, resurrected as a formidable, hissing, and roaring serpent, concealing himself within the earth at a location thereafter known as the Place of the Roar. There, Horus, the son of Isis, positioned himself as a hawk-headed staff to impede the creature's emergence. Notwithstanding this precaution, Set escaped, marshaled the Smai and Saba fiends at the Lake of Meh, and waged war anew, only to be vanquished and slain once more by Horus in the distinguished presence of his father. Horus then temporarily withdrew from the battlefield to safeguard the great god in Enrut-F, identified as Osiris, preventing the Smai fiends from drawing near under the cloak of night. Isis intervened with formidable words of power to bar the fiend Ba from breaching the sanctuary. In profound recognition of his martial achievements, Thoth decreed that Horus be bestowed the title of Master Fighter. Disregarding the etymological derivations of toponyms within the text, Horus and his blacksmiths persisted in their crusade against the fugitive enemies, successfully executing 106 adversaries upon one singular occasion. The valor demonstrated by the blacksmiths earned them a dedicated territorial district for their habitation. The final northern confrontation unfolded at Tanis in the eastern delta, wherein Horus manifested in the guise of a lion possessing a human countenance, crowned with the magnificent triple crown. Employing his flint-like talons, he dragged away 142 adversaries, rending them asunder and extracting their tongues as tokens of his triumph. Concurrently, rebellion flared within Nubia, compelling 1/3 of the enemy forces to seek refuge in the river, assuming the forms of crocodiles and hippopotami. Ra counseled Horus to navigate southward alongside his blacksmiths, and following Thoth's recitation of protective incantations over the boat of Ra, the expedition embarked. These potent spells ensured that the aquatic monstrosities could conjure neither tempest nor swell to imperil the vessels. Upon witnessing the bark of Ra, which bore the winged disk of Horus flanked by Uchit and Nekabet in serpentine guise, the rebels and fiends were seized by profound dread. Their hearts quaked, their resistance crumbled, and they perished instantaneously from sheer terror. Following the triumphant return of Horus to Edfu, Ra decreed that the image of the winged disk be enshrined within each of his sanctuaries, thereby consecrating them as sanctuaries of Horus of Behutit. The winged discs that still adorn the temple portals throughout Egypt serve as an enduring testament to the priest's faithful adherence to the Edict of Ra. Chapter 5. Legend of the Birth of Horus, son of Isis and Osiris. The text chronicling this legend is inscribed in hieroglyphics upon a stele presently preserved in Paris. Academic attention was initially directed toward it in 1857 by Chabas, who furnished a translation within the Archaeological Review and underscored the profound significance of its contents. The hieroglyphic text was first published by Ledrain in his examination of the monuments housed in the National Library in Paris, and a transcript comprising transliteration and translation was presented in 1895. The majority of the text constitutes a hymn dedicated to Osiris, presumably composed during the 18th dynasty, an era characterized by the extraordinary expansion of his cult, during which Egyptian theologians elevated him to the apex of the pantheon. Although he remained unseen within the temples, his ubiquitous presence permeated the entirety of Egypt, and his corporeal form constituted the very substance of the land. He reigned as the god of gods and the governor of the two companies of the gods, manifesting as both the soul and body of Ra. He was the beneficent spirit of all spirits, and the celestial sustenance that nourished the doubles in the other world. He was exalted as the greatest of the deities on Memphis, Heracleopolis, Hermopolis, Abydos, and the environs of the First Cataract. He embodied the formidable power of Ra-Tem, Apis, Ta, the Horus gods, Thoth, and Khnum, and his sovereign dominion over Busiris and Abydos endured for many centuries. He was recognized as the fount of the Nile and the progenitor of the north wind. His thrones were the eternal stars of heaven that never set, with the imperishable celestial bodies serving as his devoted ministers. The entirety of heaven belonged to him, and the celestial gates unsealed of their own accord in his presence. He inherited the earth from his father Keb and the absolute sovereignty of heaven from his mother Nut, seamlessly uniting endless antiquity and the boundless future within his person. Much like Ra, he waged war against Seba or Set, the monstrous embodiment of evil, vanquishing him and thereby securing enduring authority over both the gods and the dead. He exercised his creative omnipotence by fashioning land and water, trees and herbs, cattle and quadrupedal beasts, avian creatures of every variety, alongside fish and creeping entities. He commanded the very desert as its creator, while unfurling the firmament and positioning light above the darkness. The concluding paragraph alludes to Isis, the sister and consort of Osiris, and recounts the legend of the birth of Horus, a narrative of profound antiquity even during the epoch of the 18th dynasty. Isis offered unceasing protection to her brother, banishing fiends and vigilantly guarding his shrine and sepulchre through spells and incantations executed with consummate mastery. Ultimately, Set slew Osiris amidst the deity's arduous war against him and his demonic host. The pyramid texts chronicle that Set hurled the corpse of Osiris to the earth at Netat, in the vicinity of Abydos. Isis embarked immediately upon a quest to retrieve his body, adopting the guise of a bird. She flew tirelessly, wailing in lamentation, until she discovered it and alighted with a piercing shriek. Nephthys accompanied her, positioning themselves on the right side and the left respectively, adopting the forms of a hat bird and a chert bird as they located Osiris at Netat. Subsequent variations of the myth assert that Isis fanned his deceased body with her plumage, generating breath that ultimately animated his inert limbs, allowing her to extract his vital essence in order to conceive her son, Horus. The pyramid texts further append, "Adoration to thee, O Osiris. Rise upon thy left side, place thyself upon thy right side. This water I offer unto thee is the water of youth. Adoration to thee, O Osiris. Rise upon thy left side, place thyself upon thy right side. This bread I have fashioned for thee provides warmth. The doors of heaven open for thee, the doors of the streams are cast wide. The deities of Pi approach thee at the earnest supplication of Isis and Nephthys. Thy elder sister cradled thy body, chafed thy hands, and clasped thee to her breast upon the plain of Netat. In another passage we read, Thy sisters Isis and Nephthys approached thee, Camert, in thy name Camuar, Uchitert, in thy name Uchuar. Isis and Nephthys weave magical wards of protection for thee in sought, as their Lord and their God. They offer thee praise, stray not far from them. They present oblations unto thee, be not wrathful. Thy sister Isis approaches, rejoicing in her love, and thy seed enters her. She conceives as the star Septet, Sothis. Horus September emerges from thee as Horus, the dweller within the star Septet. A spirit resides within him in the form of the god Chentru, avenging thee as Horus, the loyal son who vindicated his father. Hail Osiris, Keb hath brought Horus unto thee. He hath avenged thee, delivered the hearts of the gods. Horus hath bestowed upon thee his eye, granting thee the Urart crown among the deities. Horus hath restored thy members, rendering them whole and devoid of disorder. Thoth apprehended thine enemy and slew him alongside his cohorts. These solemn words, directed toward deceased sovereigns within the pyramid texts, reflect the rites that the Egyptians believed were performed on behalf of Osiris. Such passages are exceptionally valuable, as they demonstrate that the 18th dynasty legend of Osiris was firmly rooted in traditions universally accepted across Egypt during the 5th and 6th dynasties. The hymn concludes with Horus, the son of Isis and the very flesh and bone of Osiris, ascending to the throne of his grandfather Keb, welcomed by the Chacha, the company of the gods, and the lords of truth, who assemble in the great house of Heliopolis to formally acknowledge his sovereignty. His rightful succession furthermore secured the profound approval of Nebuchadnezzar, the creator of the universe. Chapter 6. A Legend of Kensu Neferhetep and the Princess of Bektan. The text of this legend is inscribed in hieroglyphics upon a round-topped sandstone stele, discovered within the Temple of Kensu at Thebes and presently preserved in the National Library in Paris. It was unearthed by Champollion and subsequently transported to Paris by Pris d'Avens in 1846. The text was first published by Pris d'Avens and initially translated by Birch in 1853. It was subsequently republished and translated into French by Emmanuel de Rouge in 1858, followed by further translations into German and English. Early interpretations erroneously identified the king within the legend as Ramesses I, a misconception later rectified by Ehrman, who definitively demonstrated that the monarch was, in fact, Ramesses II. Through meticulous examination of the text, he proved that the narrative inscribed upon the stele was composed several centuries after the events it recounted, and that its author possessed only a partial comprehension of the Egyptian language as it was utilized during the reign of Ramesses II. The legend was formulated to glorify the priesthood of the Temple of Kensu, emphasizing their deity's formidable power to expel malevolent spirits, and it was likely composed between the years 650 and 250 BC. Following a recitation of the exalted names of Ramesses II, the legend recounts that the sovereign resided in the land of the two rivers, commonly understood as a region of Mesopotamia, and that provincial chieftains presented tribute comprising gold, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and timber sourced from the land of the god. Prominent among these emissaries was the Prince of Bektan, who dispatched his eldest daughter bearing a message of dutiful homage. The maiden's extraordinary beauty so captivated the king of Egypt that he claimed her as his wife, bestowing upon her the name Areneferu, which signifies the beauties of Ra, and brought her to Egypt to be formally installed as his queen. In the summer of the 15th year of his reign, amidst a festival dedicated to Amen-Ra at the Temple of Luxor, the king received word that an envoy dispatched by the Prince of Bektan had arrived, bearing gifts for Queen Areneferu. The envoy entreated that a man of profound learning, a magician, be dispatched to Becton to attend to Bent and Thresh, the king's sister-in-law, who was grievously afflicted with an illness. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.